Welcome to the Internet, your gateway to adventure.
My name is Dr. David Isaac Floyd. I'm a researcher of all things supernatural, terrifying, unidentified, mysterious, insidious, paranormal, and bizarre. Ever since starting the Floyd Agency in 2003, my team and I have flown around the world in search of local monsters, plunged into the depths of ancient folklore, and witnessed a lifetime's worth of strange things I'd really like to forget. Over the years, I've encountered more than my fair share of demons, beasts, and things that go bump in the night, and I've now compiled these bizarre findings for you, in the hopes that you should ever have the grave misfortune of encountering the sinister phenomenon described in these files, you'll at least know what you're up against before you're dragged into the shadows to be messily devoured. Just kidding. Probably. Today, I present one of my agency's most recent case files on the dead ships. This particular case was submitted after the death of Senior Field Agent Winston Romar, who was killed retrieving the information compiled here. Winston was a particularly good friend of mine and an experienced field agent, and so I found it appropriate to present his admirable work first. As always, any information about this case would be greatly appreciated. Case File 1051B6BA, The Dead Ships. Agent Romare Winston, deceased. Date of filing 4/17/2016. Office of filing Floyd Agency HQ, Richmond, Virginia 23220. Subject: unmaimed and or long missing maritime vessels found in various states of ruin in North Atlantic, undocumented ocean-dwelling entity present and likely responsible. Agent terminated. April 1st, 2016. Today I heard about the strange disappearance of a commercial fishing boat named Truancy near Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Typically, that in of itself wouldn't grab my professional attention, but the circumstances surrounding the incident were impossible to ignore. According to local sources, the vessel was reported missing yesterday afternoon, roughly 5 days after it was scheduled to return to Highness. But this case was bizarre from the beginning. Contact with the captain's crew was lost at 1800 hours. No SOS signal or any other distress beacon had been dispatched, and no other nearby ports had reported Truancy's docking that evening. The last statement received from the crew described a thick fog into which the boat was headed, but no other severe weather in that area had been reported by the satellites that day. As the case may indeed involve something my agency has not been aware of previously, I have volunteered to assist in the local search and rescue effort. Will update when possible. April 2nd, 2016, 8:47 a.m. Today, we were briefed on the last known details of Truancy. As no weather severe enough to capsize such a vessel had been reported by any weather services, the following likely causes of the ship's disappearance were presented: human error, fatal vessel malfunction, and rogue wave. Given the extensive experience of missing sailors, a human error is considered profoundly unlikely, and the absence of a distress signal likely rules out the second choice, too, as few potential vessel malfunctions were severe and quick enough to prevent the crew's escape and disable all forms of radio communication. Due to our inability to disprove it outright, the remaining leading suspect, although the one that nobody really believed was actually true, was rogue wave. I was assigned at the jukebox, and before we left, Skipper Burkett gave the crew and I Truancy's last known location, coordinates 42.30 N, 61.22 West, in the North Atlantic. We will be operating in conjunction with the local authorities to find Truancy and have been assigned a 60-mile sweep radius centered on the above coordinates. Will update when possible. 11:05 a.m. We've been out in the water for a few hours now, and have yet to catch a glimpse of the Truancy. All in all, about 12 vessels are participating in this morning's search, and a small fleet of local helicopters is assisting us from above by searching for float sand. Skipper Beckett insists that these things take time, but if the Truancy is still above the surface, we'll find her before sundown. I guess we'll see. We'll update when possible. 4:46 p.m. We've lost contact with one of the participating search vessels. No holds barred. Although it's only been about 2 hours since last contact, the coordinates seem to be similar to what befell the Truancy. Experienced crew, no distress, no bad weather, They did, however, mention a huge storm cloud appearing out of nowhere before the radio went dead, just like with the Truancy. The helicopter pilots had, of course, been paying little attention to the search vessels, but reported that their view of the No Holds Barred was obstructed by mild cloud cover when she went silent. We radioed in the situation, and the U.S. Coast Guard is reportedly mobilizing to get involved. We'll update when possible. No sign of either the Truancy or the No Holds Barred. Skipper Beckett is trying to remain calm for us, but I can see the confusion and stress in her eyes. I'm pretty sure she had a friend on the No Holds, so I can more than emphasize with her distress. Still, she has a job to do, and she's damn good at it. It's almost enough to put me at ease. Almost. We'll update when possible. 6:29 p.m. 2 more vessels have gone missing under identical circumstances, the Felicity and the West Harmony. The Coast Guard suspects a terrorist attack, but there's little proof of that. If you ask me, something strange is clearly happening, and it's likely something none of these well-meaning but naive people are prepared to let themselves believe. We'll update when possible. 7:19 p.m. We found the Felicity. Well, at least a chopper claims to have found her, and our ship, being the closest, is heading over to investigate. Our attempts to contact the vessel via shortwave radio are thus far unsuccessful. We will update when possible. 7:31. We followed the chopper's searchlight and indeed found the Felicity floating in the waves. However, its lights were out and there were no signs of activity on board. And I saw that it appeared to have been through a storm, the likes of which I'd never seen. The frame of the boat was trashed and broken. The VHF antenna dangled limply from its mount, and the wheelhouse window had been smashed into shards. Although we held our distance, I could plainly see splintered wood and shards of glass littering the deck of the boat. I doubt the vessel will ever be seaworthy again. In fact, the fact it remains afloat in its condition is nothing short of astonishing. We watched in silence as the Coast Guard patrol boat picked up to Felicity's port side and dispatched a few of its men to board the ship. A few minutes later, they came back up, shaking their heads. Nothing aboard. We searched the immediate area extensively, but found nothing but associated flotsam and a bloody life vest. All the lifeboats and rafts remained secured on the ship, meaning either the crew was out for a swim or something had taken them. We'll update when possible. 7:46 p.m. News of the Felicity's fate has spread to other participating search vessels, and every last one of them expected that Jukebox decided to leave the investigation to the authorities, lest they meet similar fates. I couldn't blame them, but Skipper Beckett and most of the other men on board had enough ex-military fortitude to continue, and I myself was far too fascinated by what was happening to abandon the case to a bunch of men who probably be ordered to slap Rogue Wave all over their official reports and call it a day. Our search continues. We'll update when possible. 8:40 p.m. The last helicopter has left to refuel. They'll be back in a bit, but for now we're literally in the dark, except for our front light. We'll update when possible. 9:03 p.m. We found the No Holds Barred. Our searchlight caught a glimmer of her antenna on the opposite side of a rolling wave, and Skipper Beckett ordered us to search it for signs of life while she called it in. As had been the case with the Felicity, the No Holds Barred had been left in spectacular ruin. Bachan had volunteered to investigate the wreckage, but came back less than a minute later saying he was unable to explore the ship due to the wreckage blocking the staircase. Skipper Beckett hardly responded as she reached for the radio. We'll update when possible. Something has hit the jukebox. We were traveling west at a good 10 knots for about 15 minutes or so when something smashed into the ship's underside with tremendous force. This was immediately followed by an utterly deafening sound from deep beneath the waves, and then the ship was hit again, this time along her starboard side. As I had no experience sailing, Skipper Beckett ordered me below deck so I wouldn't get in the way of the crew. I obliged, but as soon as I made it down, we were hit yet again, harder than before, and the entire vessel began to list heavily to port. As it did so, the lights flickered, and I heard the engine die unceremoniously. The jukebox had been immobilized. I can hear Skipper Beckett trying frantically to raise the Coast Guard, but to no avail. We'll update when possible. While below deck, I heard shouting and men running back and forth. Soon I heard shattering glass, smashing wood, and agonized screaming. It felt like the entire ship was either being ripped apart or dragged beneath the waves. And it was all I could do to keep my balance, let alone my composure. After the horrifying sound stopped, I waited a good few minutes and crept back up to the deck, more terrified than I have ever been in my life. Perhaps unsurprisingly, I found the jukebox almost completely destroyed. Wreckage and float Sam are everywhere. The crew, however, is not. I am now alone on a ruined vessel, trapped in a freak mist by what I assume to be a previously undocumented entity, and I have no way to radio for assistance. It's now my only hope that this file is found, but I doubt it will be. Will update if possible. April 3rd, 2016, time unknown. It has been several hours now since the jukebox was attacked. Enough light now highlights the fog that I can tell it's sometime in the morning of April 3rd. But my phone is long dead, and all electrical equipment aboard the ship that I could normally use to tell time has been disabled for hours. I've been awake all night listening to the awful sound of a massive thing moving underneath the ship. I have no idea what it is, but I have no doubt that it's what destroyed my ship, and almost certainly what wrecked the others as well. I've tried multiple times to peer over the ledge and see what it is, but all I can see is a titanic shadow, drifting around like a vulture, and I don't think it knows there's still someone alive on the boat, and I aim to keep it that way. Will update when possible. I have studied this creature for several hours now, taking notes but being careful to remain hidden. It is yet to fully emerge from the waves, but despite my inability to see the creature fully, I have made one important discovery. This strange mist is emanating from what appears to be the animal's blowhole. It may be a species of excessively rare and previously undocumented whale, but given the size and shape of the shadow that still passes inherently under the boat, I think that is quite unlikely. Will update when possible. From what I can tell, this animal is a predatory beast of some kind, and I have deduced uses its fog creating abilities to trap ships and feed on their crews. However, I do not think it does this for nourishment. The sheer size of the beast means it would have to eat every sailor in North Atlantic just to satisfy its hunger for a single day. No, I believe it likely feeds on whole hosts of large fish as often as it can, and hunts sailors for sport. As I write this, I fully understand the implications, that there is an intelligent and highly dangerous nocturnal predator which has thus far escaped detection. How a beast of such size has managed to do so is beyond me, but I think it likely stays dormant for long periods of time and only just now resurfaced to feed again. If my intuition is correct, then due to its dangerous nature but limited range and time of activity, I am designating the creature as a particularly dangerous but not extensively dangerous level 7.6 on the Entity Danger Standard, EDS. It is storming again now, and I think the sound of thunder may adequately hide the jukebox's engines. It is clear I must try to restart the ship if I have any hope of escaping from this mist and getting this information to the agency. Will update when possible. I write this trembling, as I will not survive long. I managed to get the jukebox's engines running, but the sounds must have disrupted the nighttime silence more so than I anticipated. As soon as I had the ship prepared to limp out of the fog, I heard the deafening horn blast sound and saw the great shadow had reformed, likely drawn by the noise. Before I could react, the creature, realizing prey was about to escape its trap, finally made its first direct appearance to me by raising up the waves a few hundred yards in front of the boat. Realizing I had been caught, I saw no further need to avoid activating the ship's front light, which miraculously was still operational. I shined it directly forward and up, and was immediately overcome with existential awe. The creature, the Leviathan, was nothing else I'd ever seen or heard of. It was titanic, far more colossal than any other creature should ever be permitted to grow given the strength of Earth's gravity. Far more colossal than any creature should ever be permitted to grow given the strength of Earth's gravity. Upon closer inspection, I saw that the monstrosity was covered in enormous tentacles and fins, as well as other fishy appendages for which no English word exists. Its head, if it can be called that, rested on its shoulders with no neck, much like an unpenned whale, and contained perfectly dark orbs that I assumed to be eyes. It had no nose or mouth to speak of, but from the opening of its mouth should have been was an ominous writhing mass of tentacles into which its food presumably entered. As soon as I could muster the courage, I wheeled the jukebox about and headed for open waters. The Leviathan has caught the ship and will soon... This is where Winston accounts end. When the authorities found the jukebox on April 9th, the mist, which authorities and weather services maintained never existed, had long since dissipated. There was no sign of him on board, or of Skipper Beckett, or any of the other sailors who had been lost nearly a week earlier. The ship was the final search vessel that has thus far been recovered in the area, and little was found aboard it in regards to its spectacularly ruined condition that surprised investigators. Every single other ship, save the West Harmony, for which rescue efforts have been suspended, that was recovered after the incident was also found unmanned and utterly destroyed, but somehow still afloat. Winston's name has since been added to a list of 74 other men and women who were lost at sea in the early April during what initially began as a search for the truancy. As far as our agency is concerned, we have lost one of our most profoundly talented agents and will never forget his contribution to our cause. His findings regarding the missing ships, the Leviathan creature, and the mysterious mist, which were sadly never verified or even properly investigated by the authorities, although that is far from surprising, will go down as some of the greatest findings in the history of this esteemed agency.